It's the 5th year anniversary of the Cincinnati and Dayton Sports Podcast. On this day in July 2017, I finally get off my hands and have a podcast after talking about it on Twitter for about 6 years. I can't believe I've reached 5 years with this podcast either, but let's celebrate 5 years of the local Cinday Sports Podcast, being the only audio source of Dayton sports in the Dayton area, plus a tribute to Mark Schlemmer, as promised. This is the Cincinnati and Dayton Sports Podcast. Let's start year 6 off with a bang. But first, a word from our sponsor. Hi, this is Lee W. Mowen of the Cincinnati and Dayton Sports Podcast, and I'm here to talk to you about betonline.net. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including Major League Baseball, MMA, boxing, and golf. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. And BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events. Head over to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline.net, where the game starts. Welcome to the Cincinnati and Dayton Sports Podcast with Lee W. Mowen. The podcast talking local Cincinnati and Dayton, Ohio area sports. Listen on your favorite podcast platforms by visiting cindaypod.com. That's CINDAYPOD.com. Intro theme is Overdrive by Matrika from Uppbeat.io. Here's your host, Lee W. Mowen. 5 years. 5 years of this podcast. Isn't that crazy? I know I've had my moments where there's been long lulls of no episodes, and there's been a few times where I've thought really closely, yeah, this podcast is done. But luckily, that hasn't happened, and it's crazy just to think of the growth that I've had on this podcast. So many great guests, and still a few more to come before the turn of the fall sports season. I'm just shocked that I've made it 5 years after 6 years of sitting on my hands and saying, yeah, the podcast would be great, wouldn't it? And yeah, I didn't get around to it until 2017. I'm still kicking myself in the butt for that because I've had that chance. I think mainly I just didn't want to pay for hosting. Is that bad? Probably, but hey, you know. So I went back through the archives, which I have on a spare external hard drive. And it's crazy just to hear how much I've grown to being a podcaster. I mean, if you want to hear the teaser, which was just about a 10 to 11 minutes live stream saying, hey, I'm starting a podcast, go listen to it. Yeah, here's what the first few sentences I say and that is. Hello, my name's Lee W. Mowen, and this is my upcoming sports broadcast. Just to let you know a little bit about myself, I am a broadcaster, announcer, sports writer, voiceover guy. Well, trying to be a voiceover guy, let's be honest. I've been a lifelong Daytonian, and Cincinnati is my second home, and that's what my sports podcast is going to feature. What is it about? Well, I pretty much gave the game away saying it's about Dayton, Ohio sports. It's about Cincinnati, Ohio sports. It's about everything in between. And I want to make sure that every team gets its fair share of coverage. Oh, my Lord, the sound quality is terrible. What did I do? Oh, yeah, I used a USB microphone. Now I don't anymore. I got professional audio gear and everything. Ooh. Yeah, my jaw dropped once I heard that again. I haven't listened to it since pretty much now. And I was really excited because I wanted to start it up, and I finally did. Man, the audio quality is just... I'm sorry. But yeah, you can tell nowadays the audio quality is so much better. And yeah, I feel like I'm much more smoother on air than I was back then. But then again, 5 years, you better get better, right? So here's another little tidbit on the birth of the Cincinnati and Dayton Sports Podcast. Remember, if you haven't been with me for the entire ride of this podcast, it started off as the Gem on the Queen's Crown. Why did I name it such a stupid name? Well, I wanted a name that was different. I wanted something that people like, oh, yeah, instant name recognition. What I didn't realize in the beginning was, oh, yeah, people don't actually know what the Gem on the Queen's Crown is unless they're listening to it. So eventually I add the subtitle, the Cincinnati and Dayton Sports Podcast, and then eventually I decided the Gem on the Queen's Crown was a dumb idea, and I knock it out, and lo and behold, you got the Cincinnati Dayton Sports Podcast. I think I've always had the hashtag local Sunday sports, have it like I own it, but I've used it, let's say that. And yeah, because the whole goal was I thought Dayton Sports Radio was very lacking. And there's more news on that in just a little bit. But Cincinnati Sports Radio is good, and I will stand by that. They do a great job. But hey, being someone that covers Cincinnati and Dayton area sports, you know, it's time to talk about both of them. Because I know if I just call it the Dayton Sports Podcast, then talking about Cincinnati, people get mad at me. And I don't want that. I don't want people mad at me. So you want to hear the first episode? I'm going to warn you right now, the audio quality is a bit crap. Why did I save it in 32 bits when I first started? Oh, yeah, just because I wanted to save on space. Now it's 192 bits. And it sounds hopefully good. Hopefully it sounds good. It sounds good in my ears. Your ears may vary because they're not my ears. Anyway, here's a clip of the first episode.
Hello, and welcome to the first edition of the Gem on the Queen's Crown, a podcast about the sports scene in Cincinnati and Dayton, Ohio. I am Lee W. Mowen, a broadcaster, public address announcer, writer, and jack of some trades. I have been broadcasting since 2006 when I was a freshman at Wright State University. My goal of the Gem of the Queen's Crown is to bring my passion of local Sunday sports to you. The Gem on the Queen's Crown is generously hosted by GemCitySports.com and the Gem City Sports Network. I have to thank the owners Brian Reese and Doug Brown for letting me host my podcast on the website. The name of the podcast is based on the nicknames of Dayton and Cincinnati, Dayton being the Gem City and Cincinnati being one of many queen cities in the United States, Buffalo and Charlotte being the others, but we're talking Cincinnati sports. Dayton being the Gem on top of the crown. It was also rumored that Gem was a very successful racehorse in Dayton, Ohio, hence why Dayton was called the Gem City, but that rumor is more or less false from what I read. So that's why I named it the Gem of the Queen's Crown. Originally, it was going to be named Total Dayton Sports and Total Sunday Sports, but those sounded too generic to me, therefore I picked the latter. I've explained what the podcast is about. I talked a little bit about myself and where the podcast will be hosted. Now, let's jump into the very first episode of this sports podcast titled The Pilot Flies Tonight. It's funny because Dayton is known for being the birthplace of aviation, and also a team we're going to talk a little bit about later today, the Dayton Dutch Lions supporters group, Orange Legion. They had a chant once upon a time when I was working with the team based on the Lion King song, The Lion Sleeps Tonight. Therefore, the pilot flies tonight.
Yeah. I'm sorry if your ears are bleeding from that audio quality. Again, I saved it way too low. Eventually, it got better, I promise. But, yeah, and also I thought it was funny. Too generic of a name? What was I thinking? I wanted to be different. Why? This name is plenty good because, hey, people expect Cincinnati Dayton sports, and guess what they get? Cincinnati Dayton sports. So as you can tell, things have definitely improved in the 5 years. The audio doesn't sound like regurgitated garbage. The host actually sounds better. And, well, I tell you, I don't make stupid jokes on this podcast, but we both know that's a lie. The listener, you, the listener, and I both know that's a lie. I still have stupid jokes on this. But it's just crazy to think. I'm soon due for my 250th episode, which, yes, that'll be a special episode, probably mid-August. And, yeah, I got another guest episode lined up on Monday. So, yeah, there's no slowing down this podcast. So, I have celebrated this podcast for about 10 minutes now. And really, I don't like too much celebration. I mean, yeah, I like compliments and I like people listening, and that's great. But it's just, the thing is, no, this podcast isn't about me. It's about the athletes that compete in this area. Cincinnati, Dayton, up towards Lima, as west as Richmond, as east as, yes, we do talk about Columbus. Not that team in Columbus, but we do talk about the Crew. We should talk more about the Clippers because they're in Columbus. The Blue Jackets, yeah, I probably should start talking about the Blue Jackets more, but there you go. And as far south as, we'll say Florence, because the Florence Y'alls do get some love on this podcast, as they should. They're a good ball team and came really close to winning last year's Frontier League championship, but it wasn't meant to be. So again, enough about me tooting my own horn. I don't have a horn, so this water bottle will do. There, I'm done. And let's talk about some important news tidbits, because this isn't going to be, an episode about any one sport. It's just, hey, 5 years, couple tidbits, and the tribute to Mark Schlemmer. Finally, it's been really hard for me to get these clips. So, and I know the fan clips that I got in, that wasn't easy for them either. So let's go ahead and dive into some local news tidbits. So, as you might have saw in the podcast description, it no longer says Dayton Sports aren't on Dayton Sports Radio or something to that effect. I only changed it about last week, and I already forgot what the description was, but you get the drift. That's no longer going to be the case, because 980 WONE will have local sports programming again. I can't tell you how happy I am with this news. And this is tweeted by Jim DeBelt. You know Jim DeBelt. He's been on this podcast a couple times, and he broke the news. Breaking news. TKDS Sports, in partnership with the iHeartRadio Network and Fox Sports 980, will be introducing 3 new shows starting August the 1st. Live Friday Night Football, a Saturday morning 3-hour football recap show, and a live sports talk show Mondays from 4 to 6. All will air on Fox Sports 980 AM and TKDS Sports. Yeah, this has been the podcast goal, to get local sports back on radio. And this is a great start. Now, you might remember Live Friday Night Football. It's going to be the Centerville Elks on 980. Now, remember, Dayton Dragons season leaks into high school football. So I think the first 3 weeks, they're not going to be on 980, or it's going to be tape delayed. When I did a couple games for 980 back in 2011, the first week was tape delayed. So meaning I called the game from Kettering Fairmont. They beat Miamisburg by a point, came back late in the 4th. And then driving through West Carrollton, going back home, I heard my voice. I don't remember if I kept the radio on, because it's like, wow, that guy's an idiot. Oh, wait, that's me. No, but they tape delayed it. Not sure if that's in the cards. I hope it would be, but really just depends. But as you heard from Jim DeBelt, TKDS Sports, a partnership with iHeart Dayton, and some new local stuff will be on 980 AM. So yeah, out of respect, I changed the description of the podcast because, I mean, yeah, I still had about a week and some change to be correct on that. But hey, I'm part of TKDS Sports. And hey, I really, really, really love this. And it is so awesome just to think that, a group like TKDS Sports, which normally does on the video side of things, is going to do some audio stuff as well. There's a second announcement. This was a few days ago, actually, and from Jackson Lightcap. He's a great broadcaster for TKDS Sports, as he has an announcement that Jackson and Matt Pennington Sports Talk will be returning in August. Jackson ran the show with Matt for 2 years in high school at Kettering's 98.3 WKET, and it'll come back to TKDS Sports. And I thought that eventually it would go on 980. Not sure on that, but hey, local sports radio is coming back. And if you remember the episode where I am critiquing why both sports radio stations have a 0.4 ranking, and I think Wings actually got worse since that episode, I mentioned that 980, I do listen to 980, just not the Fox Sports radio crap. And my whole thing is, it all sounds the same. It's different people, same topic. It's just, how can you listen to that? It's just, no. So yeah, local sports for me, please. I am super excited, and hopefully I'll have my hands in with this. I mentioned Saturday morning football show. Hopefully I'm part of that. And maybe you can hear this podcast. Maybe I have my own sports talk on 980 one day. That'd be pretty darn cool, wouldn't it? But yeah. Local sports are coming back to 980. I don't think I finished the thought. The big thing I mentioned on 980 is just, while they have the play-by-play contracts for the Dayton Dragons, Miami Redhawks via a syndication feed, and the Wright State Raiders are back on 980, which is good. That's where they should have stayed, but not talking about that. This makes me happy. Things are happening on 980. I can't be more proud. Wing, they'll focus on that team, Columbus, and call it a day. So, it is what it is. But 980 will soon be the home of Centerville football and possibly basketball too, and new shows. So, big tip of the hat to TKDS Sports and iHeartRadio Dayton for making this happen. And again, August the 1st will be the first show. And that'll be 4 to 6 Mondays, Saturday mornings, 8 to 11. Hopefully I'm part of that. And maybe a few other things down the road. So I can't wait for this partnership to take place. The next news tidbit, it's a big one. If you've been following the Dayton Dragons, you know that they have one of the top prospects in Cincinnati Reds farm system, Elly de la Cruz. Well, as of July 20th, the Dayton Dragons no longer have Elly de la Cruz. He got promoted to AA Chattanooga. This article is from RedsMinorLeagues.com, written on Wednesday, the 20th. The Cincinnati Reds have promoted their top prospect, Elly de la Cruz, to AA Chattanooga. He will join the Lookouts when they return to the field Friday evening. Hey, that's later tonight. The meteoric rise for the shortstop prospect continued this year. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but Elly de la Cruz, he smashed. In 73 games, the switch hitter hit .303 with 14 doubles, 6 triples, 20 homers, and 28 stolen bases. By the way, 20 home runs, 28 stolen bases. He's currently one of 2 players in the minors. Not with the Dayton Dragons, not in the Midwest League, not in Advanced A, not in Ohio, in the minors. 20 home runs, 20 stolen bases. One of 2. So yeah, Elly de la Cruz smashed. His final week with the Dragons was a big one. His final 6 games, he hit .421 with 5 homers and 3 of those were in a doubleheader against West Michigan. And yours truly got to announce that game at Dayar Ballpark. First game was a loss. Second game, it was much, much better. So, Elly De La Cruz getting promoted to Chattanooga. Tennessee's going to love him. I mean, who wouldn't love Elly De La Cruz? That dude, he carries himself with class. He's a bright star in the Reds farm system. And I know Chattanooga will appreciate him. So the situation at shortstop right now is Matt McClain. You might remember him being part of last year's Dragons team for a little bit. He's on the injured list with a sore wrist. Now, when McClain comes back, because it's not season ending, it's going to be interesting to see if De La Cruz and McClain will split time at short, if De La Cruz will play some third. He did that in Dayton. Or maybe McClain moves over. I don't know. I don't know how that's going to carry over. I am sad about the Torres and De La Cruz brotherhood being over at the moment, just because Jose Torres is still with Dayton. He's hit a bad slide as Torres, and it's sad to see because, Torres and De La Cruz, they were pretty much the middle infielders that Dayton would see. Sometimes they'd be the left infielders, but you get what I'm saying. McClain hasn't played another position besides shortstop, except designated hitter, but that doesn't really count. You're just batting. You're not playing in the field. Whereas De La Cruz, he's been at third. He's been at short, and I feel like he's been at second once. I think. Now, with UCLA and the Bruins, when McClain was in college, he did see action at third, second, center field, and very small action in left and right. Not at the same time. That'd be terrible, wouldn't it? So that's something to watch out for. But De La Cruz is no longer in Dayton. Just to tell you, on the Dayton Dragons second half, remember how they were so good in the first half, and then that series at home against Great Lakes and the road series against Cedar Rapids went kind of pear-shaped? Well, the Dragons really haven't recovered. In the second half, Dayton is last, 6th place in the East at 5-14. It hasn't been pretty, and the Dragons have lost 7 straight. Looking to snap that 7-game losing streak with a 3-game homestand against Fort Wayne, who's currently tied for 4th with Lansing at 9-12. Right now, West Michigan, if the season were to end today, they would get the second half spot and visit Great Lakes. Well, most of that first round playoff series would be at Great Lakes. But West Michigan 16-5, Lake County 11-8, Fort Wayne Lansing 9-12, and Dayton 5-14. And in case you want to hear the West, it's South Bend right now, 15-6. Cedar Rapids, they won the first half in the West, 12-9, tied with Wisconsin. Beloit 8-13, Peoria and Quad Cities 7-14. Remember, Quad Cities is the defending champs, and if they keep playing like that, they're not going to get a chance to defend that title. I don't know why I was laughing about that, but you get what I'm saying. So yeah, Dayton is 10 back of first, and I think the season rolls on until September. And now one of the star players is gone for Dayton, De La Cruz. Now, this is not the first call-up. We've talked about it on this podcast, but you got to be happy for these guys because, I don't want to say you don't want to spend your career in Dayton because Dayton's a lovely place, and it's a good facility, good people, but you want to move on. You want to get to the big show in Cincinnati or some other destination. So, you can only be happy for these guys. De La Cruz and Alex McGarry, Connor Phillips got the call up. Andrew Abbott, I believe, was the first one. And from what I heard, he's still pitching lights out. Maybe he'll be part of the pitching staff next year. Maybe in the bullpen for the Reds. I don't know. But yeah, it hasn't been officially listed on the Dragons transactions. The Cincinnati ones, let's load it up. Because at this point, you got to think some infielders from Daytona will come up because, yeah, there's now an empty hole where, De La Cruz was. And the last one from Cincinnati is listed July 19th, where Ryan Hendricks was with the Reds, now returned to Louisville. And Max Schrock is with the Bats. Taylor Motter is no longer with Louisville. I was really excited to see Ryan Hendricks, back with the Reds. I mean, he has been rocked a few times with Cincinnati, but there you go. Cincinnati is battling to get out of the basement. I think they can do it because Cubs, but yeah. That season hasn't improved, and Dayton's season is starting to go down the wayside. Actually, let's go back to the standings. I mentioned 514 in the second half. What is that overall now? Because the Dragons were like 20-some games over 500, and now they're 3 games over 500 at 44 and 41. To say that Great Lakes series was the beginning of the end, I mean, it's a little early to say the end, but that was a bad turning point. What could have been? Then again, we probably wouldn't have De La Cruz for the playoff push. And someone mentioned on Twitter that no one cares about Dayton Dragons playoff push. Excuse me, I do. I'm somebody. I talk about sports. But, I mean, yeah. Is most likely De La Cruz wasn't going to be sticking around the whole year. Dragons Baseball on Twitter did tweet something about that, just talking about how awesome Elly De La Cruz was. Like I mentioned, that article shared a lot of it. Man, oh man, it's expected, but it still hurts because De La Cruz was the star on the team. And now we're waiting on a new infielder because, again, I think the Dragons just have 4 now. I'm trying to think in my head. I could look at the roster, but nah, that's who wants to do that? I'm pretty sure it's 4, maybe 5. There's 3 catchers, and actually, no, I think there are 5 infielders with Ruben Ibarra coming up. And then most of the time, the catchers that aren't catching will either DH or play at first. I'm hoping the Dragons can figure this out, but 10 games back, that's a tall mountain to climb, especially with the season rolling on towards its last 2 months. Again, Dragons are in town this Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 22nd, 23rd, 24th, and you can catch the action. I know there's been a little controversy about a group using the logos of the Dragons. I'm not getting into that. I have my beliefs, and you're not going to know what those are because, A, I want to keep my job with the Dragons. Announcing at Day-Air Ballpark for the Advanced A team, yeah, that's a pep on my resume, wouldn't you say? And B, it's one of my main incomes during the summer. So I don't rock the boat. If you want to ask me privately what I think, I will probably not tell you because, again, politics just divides people. I believe what I want to believe. If you want to believe what you believe, fine, but don't try to cram it down my throat. There we go. And I know that's taking a stand and saying, oh, it's so fine. I don't have all the information. I'm confused on, just look it up. It's on Dayton News. WHIO's covered it. I think DTN. I'm sure Dayton 24/7 now has. But again, we're here to talk sports. I know it doesn't look good because it's not. But again, politics, this podcast is not for that. Sticking with baseball, but a much more positive tidbit. You remember earlier this winter, around January 2022, Wilberforce University is in a partnership with the Cincinnati Reds to help give the Bulldogs baseball again. Last time Wilberforce had baseball was quite some time. I mentioned that Wilberforce had all sports at one point, but now they're getting sports back, which I love to see. I love that Wilberforce is growing again. But this is LaSalle baseball coach Roosevelt Barnes accepting Wilberforce University's head baseball coach job. Article is from WCPO, Channel 9, the ABC affiliate in Cincinnati. And it's from the ultimate source of prep news in the Queen City, Mike Dyer. LaSalle High School baseball coach Roosevelt Barnes announced on Thursday he has accepted the Wilberforce University head baseball coaching position. Coach Barnes mentioned that he enjoyed his time at LaSalle and very proud what they accomplished. He was named LaSalle's head coach in October 2019. There's great talent there, and he looks forward to continuing his relationship with those young men as they look to extend their baseball careers beyond high school. Coach Barnes will always be a part of LaSalle baseball. The athletic director, Brian Meyer of LaSalle, said that assistant coach Trey Altman will be the interim coach for the 2023 season. The Lancers coming off a 14-11 record, including 2 Division I postseason tournament victories. They got second place in the Greater Catholic League South Division this past spring. And first place was Moeller because that team, they could crush the ball than Elder and St. X. Barnes has been in the Greater Cincinnati high school scene for nearly 20 years. Also works with the Reds as the recommending scout. He will continue to work for the Reds and lead the senior RBI program. Coach Barnes considers himself an ambassador for the game of baseball. I agree, and I look forward to working with all my fellow high school coaches in the area on providing an additional opportunity for our local kids to play in college. Cincinnati is a great baseball town, and I want to showcase that by providing opportunities with a keen emphasis on local talent. The Wilberforce University project is a partnership with Major League Baseball Reds Community's efforts. He said it's the first of its kind in the country, and Wilberforce will be in the NAIA Mid-South Conference. This is a conference that currently has Thomas More, Georgetown College, which I always think is closer to Cincinnati than it is. It's right north of Lexington. It's a really good program. It's a really good conference. NAIA, they're no slouch. It's just an alternative to NCAA. So Wilberforce has a conference home. Now, it says we'll compete in the NAIA Mid-South Conference. I'm not sure if Wilberforce is moving all sports to the Mid-South Conference. That'd be really cool, though. And they'd be a part of a conference with, teams that aren't too terrible getting to and from. Now, Coach Barnes says that he doesn't believe an MLB team has ever partnered with a historically black college or university with a holistic approach to the total quality of life for the student athlete. That's what the relationship with Wilberforce and the Reds community is all about. Barnes' vision includes the opportunity for student athletes to have internships and careers related to baseball. He hopes that other MLB teams follow the lead of the Reds to engage communities and build major league citizens. Coach Barnes also mentions he's thankful for LaSalle for allowing him to be the first African-American GCL baseball coach. He's also thankful for the Cincinnati Reds and Wilberforce U for allowing him to execute his vision to better the lives of young men through baseball. He's beyond blessed to be a part of this and very excited for the possibilities for the young men we engage. So yeah, I mentioned Wilberforce getting baseball back in the winter, I think January. I think I got to that news tidbit pretty quickly. Again, I forget if it was the first take or if I mentioned it in the second take, but still don't know where the Bulldogs are going to play. I think the closest field would be the Athletes in Action Complex. I mean, now they don't have Sinclair Community College because the community college decided no more sports. So that's not bad. That's not a bad drive. Wilberforce to Xenia, that's a few minutes on 42. Or if you're like me, you go on Bickle and then go on 35 and then, get there fast. But that's not the point. The point is, it's not bad. It's pretty quick to AIA. That's my guess. I haven't seen anything that Wilberforce says they're going to play there. Who knows? Wilberforce might build their own baseball stadium, which would be really cool. Again, if you're not familiar with Wilberforce, it's slightly northeast of Xenia. It's in between Xenia and Cedarville, and also was once, Central State. Now Central State broke off, and now they're their own thing. It's crazy that not one, but 2 HBCUs are literally right across the street from each other. There's a great rivalry in sports between the Bulldogs and the Marauders, but it's crazy that Wilberforce got the ball rolling. One of the first private HBCUs in the country. I think maybe the first private one, but it's one of the oldest HBCUs. And like I mentioned, if you look through Wilberforce's history, their athletic department used to have every sport. You look through the books of Wright State, Dayton, and you see Wilberforce in there. You see Wright State, I believe, had a winning record against the Bulldogs. When I was a kid, I always thought that biohazard W sign was Wilberforce's. That's Wright State's. And I proudly have that as a banner hanging over my podcast table. Because you can't find any merchandise with that logo anywhere. Although Wright State is bringing that university seal back, so thank goodness. Now, Paint on the Water Tower again by Forest Lane. That will make me happy. Anyway, Wilberforce baseball. So I wasn't sure when the Bulldogs were going to compete. That's going to be spring 2023. I don't know where they're going to play, but now we know who's going to lead the Bulldogs, and it is Roosevelt Barnes. I like what Roosevelt Barnes has done for LaSalle. And you hear in the article how much he mentions making young men better, engaging them. I love that. You know, we had Todd Benzinger in a town for a Champion City Kings game just this past Wednesday, and I could tell that the Kings were just soaking in what he had to say as a sponge. And he didn't mince words. He said that one day your playing career is going to be over. Baseball rolls on, and when you get up to minor leagues, major leagues, you better love the game because you're going to have a lot of competition behind you. And that is true. Baseball is a harsh realm in that, but it is very true. Although you can say all the sports are like that because, again, you got a lot of competition. What I like about Roosevelt Barnes is the fact that, again, he wants to engage and he wants to make these baseball players better in their lives. That's something really special. So I think Wilberforce not only has a great guy leading the charge, I think they have a great shot in competing in the first year. What am I talking about? First year. And he wants to keep the talent local. Let me tell you something about the Cincinnati Dayton area, Coach Barnes. You know Cincinnati area, but Dayton area, they're no slouch in baseball either. There's a lot of great players from Cincinnati, Dayton onwards. You are not short of talent. And I can't wait to see what the roster you build looks like for spring 2023. I can't wait to hear more about this because, again, Wilberforce baseball is back. And I love Wilberforce. I really do. It's a great site for the Dayton flight, and there's great history in the halls of Wilberforce. Again, one of the first HBCUs in this country, and also responsible for helping grow another HBCU in Central State University. And the two are still partnered. There was, a few years back, rumors that Wilberforce was going to completely shut down, but things are on the up and up for WU, and I'm very proud of that. So, Bulldogs, can't wait to see more news on your baseball team, and congrats to Roosevelt Barnes on being the first baseball coach in Wilberforce baseball history since the sport is coming back. And now, this is a topic that I'm not going to mince words with you. This is going to be very tough. As you know, Mark Schlemmer passed away a few weeks ago, and yesterday was the celebration of his life. I wasn't able to go, but I know a lot of people were there for him because Mark Schlemmer meant a lot to people. He meant a lot to me because if not for Mark Schlemmer guesting on my podcast, I don't know if I have the listenership that I still hold on to today. Mark Schlemmer was one of the first guests. Jim DeBelt was the very first, but Mark Schlemmer was the second. He was responsible for being the guest that's been on this podcast the most. And he's also responsible for having what was a short-lived entertainment section called The Round Table, where sports fans were able to join Mark Schlemmer and I and just have their way with sports. Pretty much for those round tables, I step aside because, Mark and the sports fans carried that in. So, but yeah, we had a couple of round tables, but Mark Schlemmer meant a lot to me. He was my friend, and every time he needed help, I would help him out. In the beginning, I would drive him from his place to Wing when I could, and from Wing to his place. Sometimes I'd help him get groceries when I could, and, I'd always check up on him. I I will admit I didn't do a good job in the last few months. I was trying to give him a little privacy because I know, yourself did decline. And yeah, let's talk about Mark Schlemmer. This is from the Dayton Daily News. Sports radio host, former baseball coach Schlemmer dies at 65. This is from David Jablonski. Fairmont West grad, played in the Detroit Tigers farm system and coached at the University of Dayton. So this article has Hal McCoy, the Hall of Fame writer, talking about how Schlemmer was one of the toughest guys he knew. He fought hard for several years with an assortment of ailments, any one which would have floored everyone else, and never once did he hear from Mark complain or say, "Why me?" Heavily opinionated. That's putting it lightly, isn't it? Not afraid to voice his opinions and defend them. His Facebook page was extremely popular, especially his Sunday sermons and Sunday list of one-sentence pieces of advice. Mark had open heart surgery in April, as he wrote on Facebook, and then since the surgery, he was hospitalized, from his Facebook friend Donna Grusenmeyer. Until his surgery, Schlemmer posted regularly on Facebook. In April, he wrote, "Now 3-14, this Reds team is awful. At my age, I could hit 148. If you think the seats are empty now, just wait a few more weeks, and all these stupid bubbleheads won't help." Yeah. I can't say it any better. He doesn't mince words. He didn't mince words. I mean, his opinions, he let you know what he thought. It's some of that, I probably should do, but I don't. Long before gaining fame on the radio, the 1974 Fairmont West graduate Schlemmer made a name for himself in baseball. Played in Kentucky's Union College, then in the Detroit farm system, reaching single A. Was an assistant coach at the University of Dayton for 2 seasons before being named the head coach in 1989. Just before the 93 season, he stepped down, then spent 4 years managing an independent Northern League. Now you know it as the American Association of Independent Ball, where he coached former big leaguers Dennis Oil Can Boyd and Pedro Guerrero. He was with, it's one of the Sioux. He's with the Explorers, which I think it's not Sioux City, because I believe those are the Canaries. Schlemmer was inducted into the Dayton Amateur Baseball Commission Hall of Fame in 2009. He competed in the DABC as a player and manager from 72 to 89. His father, Robert, uncles Jack and Jim, and cousin John Schlemmer are also members of this Hall of Fame. As Mark mentioned a couple times on this podcast, he experienced really terrible tragedy in 2002 when his only child, Lindsay, was killed in a car accident in Shelby County at the age of 16. Schlemmer told Dayton Daily News' Tom Archdeacon in 2011, "People say time heals, but no, it doesn't. There's no playbook that tells you how to survive. It just took all the gas out of me." And yet that dude just kept battling on. So, as you know, in between his tenure at 980 and Ween, he was a guest on this podcast. And I've tried for the past few weeks to say what Mark meant to me. He was my friend. And, helping him out when I could, that meant a lot to me, because Mark deserved another shot to be on radio. And I'm glad he got it with Wing. And I'm glad that people were able to chime in and give their thoughts. I have 2 that I like to share. One is an audio clip, and one is a paragraph. And this is from Travis Koehler. You might remember him for being on one of the roundtables. I don't remember which one, but he was part of it. Nicknamed TravKo. And yes, I believe he still has his trivia nights. He did at, now I'm going to forget that bar. TravKo, if you're still hosting trivia nights, and I share this on Facebook, just let people know where it is. But yeah, he's really good at that too, so it's really cool. So Travis sent this in to me. When asked what Mark Schlemmer meant to people, I think it's hard to define because he was something different to everyone. He was a familiar voice on the radio. He was a friend. He cared about the people who listened or called in. I have talked to several people since Mark's passing who say Mark messaged them every single day to say hi, check in, just to see how they're doing. All the while, Mark was the one truly suffering. When I would check in on Mark to ask about his health, he was always greeted with a joke or attempt to downplay it. When my brother passed away last year, Mark messaged me daily to ask how I was feeling, how I was handling things, how my folks were. It's something I'll never forget. Those things mean so much. I'm going to miss my friend Mark, as so many will, but we thank Mark from the bottom of our hearts for all the years of entertainment and all the friendships and rivalries that were made because of him. Godspeed, Mark Schlemmer. And yes, I pointed to the sky when I said that, just like our boy Kidna. Your pal, TravKo. Man, like I said, Mark Schlemmer meant a lot to Dayton. You know, baseball guy, sports talk guy, and yeah, I'm glad that I got to know him. This one is from Jimi Rodgers, aka known as Pork Chop, and this is an audio clip. I am not going to edit it because I want the emotions to come from Jimi. So here is what Jimi sent in to me.
Hey everyone, my name is Jimi Rodgers, but all the callers and Mark knew me as Pork Chop. I've been a long-time listener of Mark's shows. First time I ever met Mark, it was at one of his remote shows downtown Dayton. I was in between classes at St. Clair. I had a 2-hour window, so I decided to go down, meet him, have some lunch, and watch the show a little bit. I got to know a lot of the callers at that first show. You know, I met Ortez Flyer, The Kermish, 12 Pack, Biggie, and a few others I can't remember off the top of my head. Sorry, guys. I got to know Mark after he got fired from ONE. He gave me his number. He's like, hey, we can talk about sports, life, anything. I was like, all right, this is cool. That's the moment I got to know the guy, not the man behind the mic, actual Mark Schlemmer. Knew his life story. And it was very cool that got to know someone like that down-to-earth guy. A few weeks later, after he got let go from after he got fired from ONE, he gave me a call and he needed a favor. And I was like, okay, what's up? He needed a ride to a doctor's appointment. He started getting sick at that time, and he lost his car. I was like, yeah, I could definitely take you to your appointment, you know. And I've done it a few times, you know, more and more. And I got to know him personally. One day, me and Ortez Flyer, he needed help. And we came up with a fundraiser. And we set it up downtown Bricks up on October 2012. And so throughout the weeks before the event, I went to different places. I went to Wright State. I went to UD. I went to the Dayton Dragons. And all these places give me sports memorabilia to use for the fundraiser. I'm like, oh my Lord. It was like the community coming together. I got other things from, you know, restaurants that did his remote shows, give out gift certificates. Several of the callers give up some of their season tickets to auction off, you know, for the Bengals or the Browns. It was just like the community come together helping him. And I remember, you know, how I was shocked how this community came to help this one man. And I was so proud being from Miami Valley, you know, the community come together, help him. I remember when he went back on the radio on Wing, and I couldn't listen live, but I listened on the podcast. You can hear the excitement in his voice. And then his last day at Wing, I remember I called in. I definitely made sure I had to call in. And I was so glad he could leave on his own terms. You know, you can hear in his voice he's getting tired. And so, you know, it was a very sad day. You know, you're like, oh, a local sports talk guy is retiring, but he's retiring on his terms. Once a week, me and him talk, text or voice. It depends on who, you know, how he's feeling. You know, I always ask him, "How are you doing?" "I'm doing okay." I'm like, you know, he always had this, like, always had a concern about someone else, not him. In the last few years, I had some medical issues, and he asked how I'm doing. I'm like, I'm okay, man. You're the ones fighting cancer, and you're worried about me. And that's who Mark is. He cares about others, not himself. And I miss my friend. I miss our talks about sports. He is going to be truly missed by us callers, because he was our friend. I love him as a brother. And I love you, Mark. I know you're in heaven hugging your daughter and your mom. Thank you for being a friend to me. Thank you for everything. Goodbye.
As you heard, Mark meant a lot to people. And I'll be honest, this episode, I know that I'm joining it with me celebrating 5 years of this podcast, but I wanted to do that because Mark was pretty much the catalyst to get this podcast going and into people's ears. And I'll never forget what Mark did for me. So what I want to do now is I took a few clips of Mark, and I want to share some of my favorite ones with you. It's been really tough finding my favorite ones, but I do want to share those segments with you. If you do want to go back and listen to them, you can do that. It's at CincinnatiPod.com. Then you go to, actually I changed it up a little bit. I think it's under episodes, or is it listen? Let's go to the website. It's under listen, and then there's a menu that drops down. There's guest. Click on guest, and you'll see Mark Schlemmer, the second ever guest I ever had. And there's the round tables, all 5 of them, and all 6 appearances on the podcast outside the round table. So yeah, Mark Schlemmer, yeah, he's been on this podcast the most, and yeah, I mean, it's this episode has been, you know, I know I needed to do it, and I know that I've waited a few weeks for it, but it's been very tough, and I hope that people know that Mark meant a lot to me too.
welcome to episode 5 on the Gem on the Queen's Crown, Cincinnati and Dayton Sports Podcast. This is Lee W. Mound with you here, and for the second episode on the road, I have a very special guest. Say hello to the one and the only Mark Schlemmer. Mark?
Oh, he's special, all right.
And one, too, right?
No, yeah, the one and only, all right.
Mark, how you doing today?
I'm hanging in. Very nice. I'm very happy to do this. I might be a little rusty at this. Been 5 years since I've seen a microphone.
Hey, I mean, this is my 5th episode, and I'm still getting better. Luckily, editing's getting a little easier, too, because I don't have to get rid of so many and just now it's just all those breaths, which I have to remember not to edit.
Just be natural. That's what people like.
Mark, it's good to have you on, and I want you on my podcast because who knows local Dayton and Cincinnati sports but you?
You do. You're the voice of the common man around here. You do more of the local sports than anybody.
But at the same time, you have such a following of people from your radio show, and I'm just like, if I ever got that, I could die happy.
That's why I'm still on radio. Thanks, pal. Honestly, to say fortunate and lucky back then, and even now with the Facebook page, without a doubt, completely lucky. I don't know where they're all coming from. I don't know that much about Facebook, obviously, and people have talked about blogs and Twitters and this and that, but that keeps me occupied 24 hours a day, literally. And it's humbling of that many people, one, want to talk sports, and two, come to that page. I think we had 46 out of 50 states represented at one time, a couple foreign countries. I mean, it's amazing. You go down through the list of names on that page, and honestly, I stopped accepting friend requests for the most part because they're on the page anyway. So
you can just follow.
It's just an amazing thing of how it's all transpired. So I've been very, very lucky. And the show, I don't even know how to explain that to this day. It was just a phenomenon that happened. And I think a lot of it, or people just want to be heard. They just want to be able to talk sports, get their voice out there, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. If they're right or wrong, they would just want a place to talk sports. And I think that's the one thing over the last many years, and especially now locally, that's where they forget, the hosts forget. It's about the people, not about hearing themselves babble and ramble on about nothing. And the two rules that I always followed, one, a good sports talk host has to know sports. Mm-hmm. And number two, they have to be able to hold a conversation. And number three is you look at number 1 and 2. And the biggest thing I notice now, they all want to be comedians. They all want to be somebody funny instead of letting the callers. That's what it's called a call show for. Let them do the talking and you just respond and answer. Yeah, you got to give them topics and this and that, but that's where the sports talk shows today really hurt. They don't allow the people to talk. Maybe you're on hold for an hour and all of a sudden you get 10 minutes or 10 seconds. I think that's what people found good about what we did. We'd mix in the national guest, a local guest, what have you, but yet it was more about the people. They were the stars of that show. I might have been the referee and the ringmaster and all that, but it was about everybody that called it, and the Facebook page is the same way. Mm-hmm. The big difference is I can't control a Facebook page like I could a phone call because it was one-on-one, and now it's everybody against everybody, and it's difficult at times.
It's like if you still had the sports talk show and you had everyone go live at the same time. It's just a blend of voices.
Well, a lot of times people on the show would ask, can I go on the same time as, say, you and somebody else? No. Because that just creates problems more often than not. And on Facebook is a great example. They want to get keyboard strong, or they want to fight. They literally want to punch each other in the face over a football or a basketball game. That's not sports talk. That's moronic at that point. Yeah, you get trash talking this and that, but the biggest problem and the biggest thing I have to fight on Facebook is not letting that happen. Keeping that to a minimum. And if it happens, you basically have to block them or just shut them down.
So, Mark, let's talk about your local roots. Where did you come from, and how did you wind up in the Dayton, Ohio area?
Well, that's where I came from. I was born in Dayton, grew up in Kettering, went to Fairmont West when it was. Now it's just plain old Fairmont, but family was from here. I said I went to Fairmont West High School and then went to Union College in Kentucky. And from there was fortunate enough to go into pro ball for a while, baseball. Unfortunately, my only child was killed in 2002, which put the end to baseball career and everything else because I was managing at the time. And all of a sudden I'm into radio, which was highly unexpected. I never imagined doing anything like this. The only radio experience I had was being on the other side of the microphone during a manager's show, coach's show, whatever. I was fortunate enough to coach baseball at UD for a few years before going back into pro ball again, managing. But it happened in a strange way. You know, honestly, Chick Ludwig's the one that got me into the radio. After 4 years after Lindsay had died, I really didn't want anything to do with anything. And he suggested going down to O&E that he thought they did a sports talk show. And next thing I know, I'm doing it on my own, and the phenomenon took off. But it was, I don't even know how to explain it to this day, how and why it took off like it did. But that's kind of how I got into radio. And next thing I know, I'm into Facebook, because once I got off the air, people kept asking me to write or, you know, whatever. And I don't know anything about Facebook. So the next thing I know, last week I was up to 82,000 comments or something from what that thing said. So
it's amazing. It's
been a big help to me to get through days. I made so many good friends through Facebook and the show more than anything. The show was and still is one big family. The Facebook page has its fights, but it's one big family. So that's kind of where it all started from. I've been very fortunate in a lot of ways. And then other ways, like with my daughter's death, you have the downsides too. But, you know, day to day, you either keep going or get run over, one or the other.
You said you played some baseball. What position were you?
Well, when I went down, I was a second baseman, and they moved me to third pretty quick. That was kind of interesting, but I had a chance to do that. And again, very lucky. There's people in this area that were so much better, and still, of course, I'm 60 now, but back then they're so much better, never got the opportunity. And that's pretty much, it's like anything. You have to be at the right place at the right time and get a break. And I was very lucky to do that. And then, you know, even luckier to get to coach at UD, be the head coach there. And then after that, go back and manage in pro ball too. And so I said, it's been an interesting run. My family, my dad played professionally for the Boston Braves back in the day. I had an uncle who was a GM with the Milwaukee Braves. My older brother played in college at Morehead State. So that's my family. That was my family's life, was sports and baseball. And I guess I did more of that than schoolwork and studying. That's where all the knowledge comes from.
They do say you can learn a lot from the diamond.
Oh, there's a lot of lessons on the diamond and the bus and the clubhouse. Absolutely. But yeah, it's been an amazing ride how it got to this point. Not that there isn't some downsides to it too, but everybody's got issues too to deal with. And that's what I say to people, and I'll post it occasionally. They have no idea how fortunate I've been to have them get me through a lot of days. Being able to go on Facebook, and when I was had the show, that gets you through an awful lot of days. Days you feel down, like you don't want to be there. These people are amazing. To get to be such close friends with so many people that I had obviously never known before the show is really hard to figure, hard to believe. But this is just one family. When you go to remotes, when we used to do them, the way they bonded together is incredible. It was the people's show. It still is. And it's just sad that nobody has figured that out that run radio stations around here, that these people are starving for a place to talk sports. They are literally starving. If you fill up a Facebook page, that should tell somebody that people really want somewhere to talk. And there's a lot of talented people, yourself included, that can do this. It's not just me that did it. There's a lot of talented radio personalities and people that can do this. they're just not getting a chance.
Let me ask you this, Mark. You mentioned what made the show successful. Let's say there's people out there wanting to become sports talk hosts, sportscasters, announcers, what have you. What's your advice?
It's a good question. For the people that have asked, the biggest thing is you have to be yourself, whether that's good, bad, or indifferent. You can try to emulate somebody that you've heard on TV, whether it be a Marty Brenneman or a Bob Costas, Jack Buck, whoever. But at the end of the day, it's still you. And I think Tom Brenneman falls into that trap of trying to be like his dad a lot.
Yeah.
Jim Day does a great job at what he does is that sideline guy. Mm-hmm. But I find he catches himself trying to be Marty Brenneman at times, using catchphrases. The best advice I can give anybody is be yourself. Don't try to be something you're not as far as a comedian. You have to know sports, as I said, number one. Second of all, never lie to your audience. Don't. Because eventually they're going to find out you were wrong or you did it, and then you're done.
Your credibility
you're done because they will never trust what you tell them again. Don't be afraid to just say, I don't know. You know, don't try to stir something up as a sports talk host just to get callers and or
clicks, views.
New words I've learned, clickbait. Never heard of that one before, but nonetheless.
It's pretty much, oh, well, look what this guy did. You won't believe what he did. Click this.
People will say that to some of our topics, and they used to do it when I was on air. Oh, you're only doing that to stir, stuff up and get, no, I'm not. And the people that know me well enough, what I write and what I say is honestly how I feel.
It's you.
It's just me. It doesn't mean I'm right, but guys like Homer Bedlow and Billy Hamilton, I'm not fans of. That's just my opinion. That doesn't mean I'm right, but at the same time, you can't bang the drum so loud that you're shoving that whole drum down people's throats going, hey, I'm right and you're not, so screw you.
Opinions are not meant to be right or wrong. It's what you see coming out of your eyes. Right. Without
those opinions and without the people's feedback, you have nothing but you're talking to yourself, a lot like the show. It's on 4 to 6 on 1410. I didn't mention any names. But you have, the first and most important is you have to have sports knowledge. You have to have opinions. You can't play waffle every time. Well, I don't know. But on the other hand, because people, they want your opinion, but they don't want it. They want to be able to give theirs.
They want to be able to have something where they can build their own opinion.
If you want to be Howard Stern and just yell at somebody and call somebody a name because you disagree with them, or you just want to stir it up. When I started O&E, I remember one of the people, you got to let them know you're in their face. Why? That doesn't work. That shtick's long since gone. People want to be heard. They don't want to be called stupid and names. Yeah, I would argue with people occasionally and get into a discussion, but for me to go, God, Lee, you're an idiot. What are you, stupid? That's going to turn you off. People hear it are going to get offended and go, I'm not listening to this nonsense. So you have to be able to hold the conversation. You have to be able to disagree, but you also got to have a reason you're disagreeing. You got to have some facts, but at the same time, we used to have a caller. We called him Stat Boy. He also is still on that station once in a while. Good guy, but you can't read numbers to people and call that sports. Yeah, you got to have some background of, okay, this guy's doing this or this or this. You can make stats, sing, and dance anything you want him to do.
It's like advice for play-by-play broadcasters. You can't just go
You can't read numbers all day long.
You have to be, saying what's happening. It's not all numbers.
Controversial is fine, but you can't be controversial to the point you're doing it just to get people to call you. That doesn't work. And I think over time you're seeing that the Howard's the shock jocks, as it were. No, gone. I want somebody that I can talk sports with, period. So as far as advice would go, you got to get a break, as you well know. Somebody has to give you that opportunity. You're going to make mistakes. I still make them. I make a lot of them. But you can't be afraid to fail or say what you think. But just be ready for the bullets in return.
Right.
If they don't get personal, that's okay. Now, if somebody wants to really get personal and no, you don't take that. But at the same time, you don't give that out either.
Right.
So being yourself is the biggest advice I can give anybody, but come ready with some knowledge. Don't just, hey, I got statistics. That doesn't work.
If I wanted just numbers, I just stare at a calculator.
Yep. If you want to read numbers and let people talk, the problem is they're going to ask you a question. If you can't answer it and just sit there dead air, you're done.
Yeah. And like you said, you got to be honest. If you don't
have
know,
to be.
you don't know. I mean,
most of the people don't agree with what I say. It doesn't make me right or wrong. It's just an opinion. And here you go.
It's from the one and only Mark Schlemmer. There's only one of you.
Yeah, but that's just, fortunately I've had experience in a lot of the different sporting areas. Doesn't mean I'm right. It's just what I've seen and what I've experienced. That's all.
Exactly.
But don't ever quit chasing your dream. That's for you, for all the people out there that want to do this. Yeah, it's hard, as you know better than anybody. It's hard to break into this.
I mean, 7 years out of Wright State, and I'm still looking for break number 1.
But you're getting to do a lot of things people aren't getting to do, like the PA announcing at the different events.
Yeah.
Your voice is still being heard. Your name is still out there, and people know who you are. Now, somebody all of a sudden might just go, hey, this guy just left. What about you? So don't quit chasing that dream as hard as it gets. Don't.
I mean, it's been difficult. I'm not going to lie to you.
Tell me about it.
But the jobs I have now with UD, Wright State, I do all the hockey at South Metro Sports, just a stone's throw away. It's a huge honor. I love it.
A lot of people would love to be in that position.
Yeah.
And people would always go, man, you got it. This is great. All you do is talk sports. Well, that's true. But for the people that always said, what the hell? All you do is walk in the studio 5 till 3 and go on the air. No.
You got to prep.
My day would start, and still does, in all honesty. I may get up at 2 or 3 or 4, depending, but no later than 5 to start putting the things on the page. Now, when I was on air, it was the same thing. Only you're up all night, because if you think of something, you write it down, and it'll hit you at any time. It's not just going in and sitting in front of a microphone and doing it. You better come in with topics prepared and have some background to do it. But it's the greatest thing going. It's a great job if you can do it. But getting that opportunity is very, very difficult. And then getting lucky enough to have an audience, very difficult. You see a lot of guys on TV now, they never played a game in their life, which doesn't mean that they had to, but you can tell they're reading everything they're doing. Or they have a producer handing them stuff to read, like Jim Rome. Mm-hmm. He was basically, here, this is what you want to read today. Here's, he had no background, but he had a backing. Yeah. There's your difference. A lot of it's like anything else. You got to get a break. But don't quit chasing that dream, because, man, sports is the best thing going. It still is.
Yeah, I mean, sports world is fantastic. And just to go over the previous point, my girlfriend is the wise one of the relationship. She always...
Are you that?
No, I'm not going to argue
no
that.
Way.
My girlfriend is the wisest one of the two of us. She always remembers, when I'm feeling down, I'm like, what am I going to do?
Why am I doing this?
Is this dream even worth chasing anymore?
Yep.
She always remembers to tell me, you see what all you're doing? I'm like, no, I guess I forgot about that. I mean, it's not like I do. It's just... It's not that I'm being ungrateful. It's I want the next step.
Patience is a hard thing.
Patience is a hard thing.
There are many days, and I've been very blessed and fortunate with the people on the page from the show that I've made friends with, that since I've been off the air, which will be 5 years, 6 years coming, there have been a lot of rough days. Days you don't want to get up, days you just ache from the cancer and the other maladies. And then you get to that point you're talking about where you're going, the hell am I doing this for? I don't get paid for this. My old boss, Tony Tilford, about 2 months ago, we were talking about it, because I'd had it. And he asked me, he goes, do you still like doing it? Well, yeah. He goes, if you don't do it, you're going to be miserable more so than you are now. And you're lucky to have somebody like that to kick that back in, going, you're right. But there are those days in any job, but this one especially, when it's just, you don't feel like doing it. And you hit that patch where it's like, what am I doing this for? But then you see the people that will message you, with such kind words, thanking you for doing it. It helps get them through the day, which you forget about. I mean, I don't know what everybody's going through, but when you get a message like that and they say, hey, look, we're really glad you're doing this. It helped us get through some rough times. That makes it worthwhile. And I know what you're talking about. You're a lot younger than I am and still trying to fight that ladder. You can't give it up. And as long as she's supportive of it, chase it until they take the uniform off of you. Keep chasing it.
Like I mentioned, very lucky in my life. I mean, my girlfriend is super supportive, and yeah, I mean, she kicks me down there when I need it to remember that I'm actually doing.
You're doing a lot more than a lot of people are.
I'm doing okay. I'm doing okay. I'm always trying to get the next step, but
that patience is the hardest thing.
Yeah,
I got lucky. I fell into it. I never took a day of radio class in my life. I couldn't turn a radio board on if a gun was in my head. I could blow it up probably, but I was very fortunate the way it worked out. But don't quit chasing what you're after. Eventually it'll pay off.
Practice makes perfect. Keep doing it. I mean,
I don't know. I practice every day and I'm far from perfect, but it's a lot of fun. You're getting to do things and touch a lot of people by what you guys are doing that other people wish they could do. And they think it's easy. I used to invite people at the station when they would, can I come in and walk? Come on. And the one thing I always tell them, okay, now you go home and you put a show together for one night and bring it back to me. And when they do, half the time it was a mess. Okay, now go do this for 7 days a week, 4 hours a day. Now tell me, come back and show me. And then just follow me around the station and see what I go through day to day to day.
I mean, 28 hours a week. I mean, just the planning you need for that.
Well, that was just on air. Then when you put in, I was probably putting in 16 hours a day easily because of writing the blog. And if you don't keep up with the blog, then what's the point of having it?
Yeah.
You know, if you're not going to update it hourly or when things happen, what's the point of it?
Exactly. I mean,
there's no point. Oh, yeah. I got a blog. All right. And you're not updating it. So it doesn't mean anything to me.
I'm very guilty on that because for the longest time I didn't update my website except
well, I look at the Dayton Daily News site occasionally. You have a whole staff of people.
Yeah, I mean,
but yet you don't update your blog or your webpage online. There's stories on there from like months ago. And I'm like, wait a minute. I can do this every hour, but yet you have people getting paid to do this. You can't. There's something wrong with that.
I mean, the thing is, I don't check the website. It's just follow the tweet, follow the Facebook.
Well, you got a lot of other things you're chasing too. So you don't have the time. That's why I don't want Twitter and all that nonsense. If something goes on, somebody usually will send it to me.
I'm still trying to get Mark Schlemmer a Twitter account.
I got a better chance of getting a date than you got to get me on Twitter. Ain't going to happen. If anything happens on Twitter, I usually get somebody will send it. I have enough trouble keeping up with everything else. I got all the sites programmed into that computer over there.
It's like Facebook. It's like status updates, except it's just coming right at you. And actually, that's the one.
You mean on Twitter they tell you when they're going to Kroger's or when they just took a dump or when they're going out and playing the kids and all that? That stuff is just riveting when I read it.
So let's jump from the Explorers to coming back to Dayton, Ohio, and the WO&E days. You mentioned earlier the fans to call in, talk about sports. That's what made the show. But when did it all start?
Well, I said Lindsay, she had died in 2002. And at that point, the wind leaves you. There was just nothing that drew my interest at all. You know, you're trying to get through that. And I said, Chick was working at the paper at the time and called me and said, you really need to start doing something. And I remember my answer was, at the time when you lose a child, let me know. And, you know, so he's the one that said, I think O&E does a sports talk show. And I thought, hell, I thought O&E was country. Last I knew. So went down sight unseen and, Dave Alexander and Flash Minor were doing the show. And I mean, we got a couple calls that night and it just kept going and going and going. And again, being from here and being lucky enough to do the things, not just myself, but my family had done, people knew me and it made it easier for them to call. And I think, as I said, it's a call show for a reason. It's for the callers, not for me to babble. And I think they liked that it was just like sitting here now, only without beer, that you just let the people be themselves. You know, yeah, you got to give them topics. You got to kind of guide them certain ways. But as long as you let the people get their voice heard, they're fine. And I think they realized that first night when they told me I was doing it on my own. I'm like, you're nuts. I've never done this on my own. I never hit a break on time. I'd butcher coming back in. I didn't know what all that stuff was. And I think the people liked that because it was just like hand-to-hand combat. The board op would stand there shaking his head, looking at big play Bengal. Greatest board op ever. We had so much fun. And it just got to be a following. And I think since the day I was born, I just nickname people. I don't call them by their real name. For whatever reason, it just doesn't happen. And we started tagging people. 12-pack, you know. Dick from Dayton, you name it, the commissioner, Big E, Comrade Orta. I mean, it goes on and on. And people, I think, just really took to that. Everybody wanted a nickname, and I still get it today. Why don't you give me a name?
I think
well, it just doesn't just kind of fly out there all the time.
I know. I still think you owe me one, too.
Oh, I'll get you one.
I know.
I'll get you one. I mean, it just kind of hits occasionally, you know, but that really helped. And then the people just really made the show what it was. And then adding the guest and the local celebrity people. I mean, we'd have, as you remember, we had anybody and everybody. The comedians would come in, you know, the Ralphie Mays of the world, the Gary Cans of the world, Finesse Mitchell's, Rob Schneider, who I never thought was funny at all. I still don't. But he was one of the best guests we ever had. Wrestlers, Jerry the King Lawler. And the one thing I wish I would have done, and I didn't, was keep notes from every show. I don't know why I never did. I wish I would have, because I'll see somebody on TV like Maurice Jones-Drew and go, oh, yeah, we had him. It'll just strike. And people will ask, who was your favorite guest or who was the most difficult guest we ever had? I don't really know. Jim Brown was the hardest for me, the football player.
Yeah.
Because his people were just basically pains in the ass. Mm-hmm. What do you want? What are you going to ask? You know, and I almost went, well, I'm not going to ask about him smashing his wife's car with a ball bat. You don't have to worry about that one. But very fortunate that it got to where the comedians would, the word kind of got passed through them all. When you're in town, you need to go there. We had so much fun with those people. I mean, it was just the Reds, Brandon Phillips calling in out of nowhere, you know, Ocho Clowno for 4 hours one night. It was just fun. And I think the people really took to that. And again, like I was saying earlier, that's where the so-called sports talk people in this area don't get it. It's not about their opinions or their hearing themselves talk. Yeah, people want to hear it, but they're the ones that want to be heard. You know, the national shows, okay, fine, whatever. It's a different take. But around here, it worked because people wanted to be heard, and that was their show. And that's where they're missing so bad in this area. But again, it goes back to rule number one. You got to know sports. And if you don't,
then
they're not going to call you. You can't take a call and go, well, I don't know. The one thing I was very honest and made it very clear up front. If I don't know the answer, I'm not going to try to lie to you, because if you do, then you're dead.
Yeah.
If I didn't know something about kickball or hockey or whatever, I'd tell you. I don't know. You tell me.
It's better to be honest type of thing.
It really was just, like I said before, a phenomenon of how the thing took off. And, you know, people like Tony Tilford, my old boss, made it very easy for me. I had very few restrictions. We'd go on remotes. My God, those were events, man. Those were something to be. Well, Steve from Springboro. I mean, the list now, you got me thinking of the names. Just the characters that would show up. Hera Clara. Oh, my God. They finally had to put a dump button in. After I was on for about 2 weeks, they finally realized you might need a dump button. You know, it was so much. When Jack Pohl, nobody knew Jack was funny. That was probably one of the best shows we ever had. He stayed for like 3 hours, and we had people calling in saying they could hear cars next to him on the road laughing over stuff we were doing. Just stuff like that was so much fun. And I just wish the powers that be would let these people have their show back. It doesn't have to be me doing it, but let these people have their damn show back. Y'all are missing a big time here. You're missing income for one, and you're missing letting the people enjoy something. You know, that's the hardest part for me to swallow right now. It doesn't make any sense, but they have the ball. I don't.
But like you mentioned, it's the fans. It's
without the fans, you don't have a radio station. You don't have a ball game. You don't have crowds. radio, TV, music, whatever you want to name, it's about the people. It's about the fans paying the ticket prices and giving them what they want. And they seem to miss that around here. The excuses of, well, we really don't care. We get it from this one or that one. No, that's bull. Sorry, that's wrong. Sports people are just as important as anybody else. Yeah. And in most cases, you've seen UD have a couple good tournament runs. One of the local WHI radio, look how they jump on their back and all of a sudden have call-in shows hosted by people that don't even know what a sports is. So sports are very important. When a city wins, the beer is cold and every girl's blonde and beautiful. And every guy looks like me. Well, Fabio. When you lose, ask the Browns fans. Every beer's warm and every girl's 500 pounds and uglier than me. The Steelers became relevant because they got really good in the 70s.
The Iron
Before,
Curtain days.
they're just an industrial town on the river that serves Stoney's beer and Iron City. That's it. The UD basketball is a great example. Look how much they energized this city. Because of that, they're getting a hell of a lot of renovations at the arena.
I still can't wait to see.
If they lose, you don't get that. So not everybody's a sports fan. I get it. Yeah. But there are a hell of a lot more of them than people think. If not, why is the Super Bowl one of the biggest events in the world?
My girlfriend's not a sports fan, but that's okay, you know?
She doesn't have to be.
Yeah. I mean, I have to kind of censor myself when talking sports.
No, you don't. She'll come around.
I don't know about that. She loves hockey, but that's about it. Soccer.
I was going to say, as long as it's in kickball.
No, it's hockey and kickball.
Kickball on grass, kickball on ice.
Where did kickball come from? I have to ask that.
I'd like to take credit for that one, but I can't. My old buddy Tony Cruz, the equipment manager at UD, he'd come on the show quite often. And he came up one night with, we're talking third world kickball. That's all it is. And my description always was fat kid kicks it as far as he can. Skinny kid runs back down the field with it. Fat kid kicks it back the other way. Skinny kid runs the other way. You have nothing score or nil in your kickball jargon.
Yeah.
But I can't take credit for that one. That's Tony's.
I see.
Please let me use it often.
I was wondering about that because I know Brian and I would share Dynamo news with you. And it's like kickball news. Like,
absolutely. It's kickball.
Where's that coming from?
Well, it's like you were tartan pride. Nobody to this day, I don't even know what a tartan is. I think it's a floor, but Pricey's trying to convince me it's like a kilt or a skirt or a rock or something.
It's a Scottish term for that kilt design, like the green and the. I did look that up. That
strikes fear in the hearts of every opponent. A kilt.
Okay, so what is more PC? Tartan/Tartan Pride or Satan's like they were back in the 60s? I think 60s, maybe 50s.
PC, there's no doubt about it.
Oh, yeah.
You got your participation ribbon and orange slice next to you, by the way.
I'm drawing it on my notes right here. You have to sign this for me. I say, look, I got Schlemmer's autograph.
Sinclair is like the most hidden gem in this city.
It's right in downtown, and yet they have some of the best sports around.
Why UD and Wright State, and I have my own views on this, why they will not use this as a feeder system for basketball. I know Wright State does for baseball, and they're very successful at it. UD would like to.
Had a
I think the biggest problem, neither one of UD or Wright State wants to go, yeah, we took a Sinclair kid, just because of the way it sounds. Because the fan base is going to go, oh, my God, you had to take a Sinclair kid? Well, I got news for you, fans. A lot of other schools around the country are taking them.
You know how cheap it is to go to Sinclair and then go to Wright State and Dayton, half the debt?
A lot of kids aren't ready for Division I basketball, let alone college experience, so that helps them adjust to it.
It's a big
Jeff
jump.
runs a hell of a program down there, not just on the court, but off. But it's the most hidden gem in the city. It's like, what are y'all missing? Yeah, I get it. UD's a cash cow. They own the Dayton Daily News and all that stuff. But there are other things going on in the city of Dayton and around the area that are deserving of attention. I mean, you guys are giving a lot of them, thankfully.
I mean, my podcast was designed to get everyone involved. Like, you know, people know Dayton. They might know Wright State.
If you keep doing what you're doing, you're going to have a bigger audience than you think. People want attention. They want to be heard. That's the whole thing.
I mean, Cedarville's men's kickball team.
That's the cleanest place I've ever been.
I like Cedarville.
It's clean.
I like their gym court. You ever seen it? Like the clock they have? It looks like a hive in there. It's awesome.
I played there once my first year at UD, and it's like a roadside rest. It's just antiseptic. Now, Edison State, the light bulbs, that's still my favorite opponent for your Tartan Pride.
The light bulbs. They're named the Chargers.
No, they're not. They're light bulbs. It's Edison State.
Los Angeles light bulbs. Easy to break. There you go. Now they're done for the season. No, but what was I even talking about? Cedarville's men's soccer team. One of the Dynamo goalkeepers, Paulo Pinto, he had what was his record? He only lost a game, and he only gave up 4 goals throughout the entire season.
Didn't they have a couple of twin girls that played basketball or something? I mean, I know they've had some pretty good sports teams, but again, they're in Central State's in the same boat.
Yeah.
They're just there.
I covered Central State for a year. Their football team was pretty good. I mean, their basketball teams were excellent at the time. It was fun to call Central
UD
State
football,
sports.
same thing.
Yeah, UD football.
It's not Division I, but you're putting 13,000 in for basketball, but yet you can't put 4,000 in for football.
I mean, it's football. I mean,
and it's your alma mater. You support, your school, but
I mean, heck, Wright State even has football now. Granted, it's not NCAA affiliated.
We used to cover it all the time on the show. We'd have them in all the time.
I mean, they have their own field behind alumni now. I mean, you don't have to go to Bellbrook or Huber Heights to go see Wright State football.
They're putting in work.
Yeah.
Just give them a little attention. There's plenty of sports to be had. Unfortunately, nobody's talking about it.
I mean, I get it. The big sports will always remain big.
And they should.
But
that doesn't mean you squash everybody else.
I mean, Anthony Grant to the Flyers, that's huge. I mean, a Flyer alum that's got NBA experience.
Not everybody that are UD fans was happy about that when they hired him, but they will be.
They'll come around, I feel.
He's not going anywhere. And as you said, he's got great NBA connections, which helps.
Yeah.
He does need to get off to a fast start. Unfortunately, fans can be very fickle. If he gets off to a rugged start, say 1-3, 2-5, all of a sudden the squiggy chants are going to start up again.
Yeah.
But you got to remember, whoever would have come in, they lost a lot of players. You lost basically 5 guys that carry the ball.
Scoochie, the biggest one, I feel. I mean,
yeah, you better find a guard, but Anthony will be fine. You got to get some health. You got to get the Greek kid healthy and get some luck, but they're going to be fine. Wright State's the one you better watch.
Yeah, Scott Nagy. I mean, I've listened to a lot of the games that Chris Collins did.
Another guy that gets no credit around here.
I know. He does a terrific job at Wright State.
He's a great baseball announcer, too, but because it's Wright State, he gets swallowed.
And the thing is, too, I mean, Wright State baseball, how huge is that program? Just
has been since Nish was there. Nish was built that program from the ground up. It's nationally known. It's just not known around here.
I mean, I know everyone. I wanted to avoid the hornet's nest, the swinging of the bat at the hornet's nest about, Wright State and Dayton need to play each other. Because I know I'm going to get a billion comments.
So what?
And because I work at Wright State and Dayton, I got to,
The one thing, and people used to say that to me because we had Wright State on the air, was on O&E at the time, but yet I would still make Wiener Night comments, squirrely T-shirt comments. Hey, it is what it is. If you're like Suntan Bed, Pecoro, and Giesenslop, the whipped cream boys, I'm sorry, that's earrings on a hog. You can't do that. Yeah, you have to know who's paying your bill, but you can't try to put whipped cream on turds.
No.
You had it if you choose. But fans aren't that stupid. Well, some of them are.
Yeah.
That elephant in the room, it should be in there and bring some other elephants with it. That game should be played. Excuses, no. You already played them 7 times. It'd be dumb enough if you had never played them, but you already did.
I mean, the series 5-3, that's a close series.
When Xavier and Cincinnati started, Cincinnati was so pathetic. Tony H had taken him lower than Jim O'Brien took UD. Now it's a national TV game. It's going to take somebody with some stones from UD to just say, okay, fine. Put $1 on the ticket. We got a lot of charities that can use help in this area.
Yeah.
It's going to take Wright State. They're the little boy right now. I get it. They got to step forward, go to the UD Dayton Daily News and just say, okay, we'll play you at your place anytime, anywhere, 3 times in a row. We don't care. We just want to play a game. The court's still the same distance. The baskets are still 10 feet high. Yeah, there's fans there. We'll play you right now, anywhere, anytime. And if the UD won't play them, now you know who the fault is. And yeah, I'm a UD guy. I was born and bred, raised, but I still have friends at Wright State. Yeah. It's a game that needs to be played. And all these excuses, oh, nobody wants it. Yeah, they do. Ask the players. Ask the community. It's foolishness that it's not played, but to avoid it, no. If you avoid it, you're doing everybody a favor. You're putting it in a corner going, nobody wants to play it. Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do want to play it.
There was an event several years back with Wright State and Dayton alums playing over in Xenia. I forget what it was.
It was at a church in Beaver Creek, and about 5 people showed up.
Yeah.
It's a nice thought, but guess what? I don't want to see fat guys like me run up and down the court. I want to see the real deal.
You want to see the college teams.
I want to see the game that matters. You're playing in every sport but that one, even girls basketball. So how stupid do you people really look? Quit hiding things. It's like trying to say Kaepernick's not getting blackballed. Yeah, he is. Not the fact that he stinks as a quarterback, but
I mean, this last year wasn't great.
Some things are obvious. Yeah, Wright State is rebuilding. Yeah. I'm telling you, you give Nagy this year or next year, he'll have him in the tournament. One, because the Horizon League is not. They can win it.
With Valpo out of the league,
you can sneak in and win it.
Yeah,
he gets his own kids, and UD will not like that.
I mean, Cleveland State and Youngstown State, they'll have first-year coaches, so their rebuilding process is a year behind Wright State's already. So Wright State can sneak in there. I think their biggest opponents are Oakland and UIC.
He'll build it okay.
Yeah, I feel
that's a topic you can't ignore.
The original point of that was when Wright State and Dayton play in like baseball, soccer, I always get excited when I get to announce. I mean, heck, I saw a perfect game at Dayton when Wright State's Jesse Schultens threw that CG perfect game, and now he's, I think, Advanced A, maybe Double A in San Diego's.
There's a lot of talent on both those clubs.
There's a lot of great kids in all these teams, and that's the big thing I want to accomplish in my podcast, and hopefully I get a chance to.
The more you keep doing it, the more audience you're going to get. I know Duggar has told me a few times that parents will comment to him how happy they are that somebody's covering these kids' games.
Especially single-color baseball.
It's word of mouth, man. It'll take off. Because you're not going to get any help from the paper, obviously. But you just got to keep doing what you're doing, and it will work.
The last 2 episodes I've done with special guests, it's been fun because I hear the stories that, Jim DeBelt and yourself have gone through, and it's different. It makes for a different episode, which, by the way, right now, before uploading this, Jim's episode since Thursday has about 88 listeners. So it's not bad. Like I said, I wasn't expecting a trillion, billion, or what have you.
You'll be surprised. All of a sudden, you're going to hit it. It's going to hit gold.
I hope. I mean, like I mentioned, I don't know of any Cincinnati or Dayton scratch. I don't know of any Dayton sports podcasts to listen to. I mean, I want to hear Dayton sports.
If you give people a reason to listen, you give them a good topic, you give them some good people to talk to, you'll be amazed and that's how my show took off. It was word of mouth. Boom, boom, boom. And all of a sudden, here it is. I say you can't quit doing what you're doing. There are a lot of interesting people out there in this town. Andy Furman would be a great guy to talk to. You talk about stories that he could give you?
Oh, I bet.
How about Jeff Price? A lot of stuff happens down there, as you well know, that people have no idea about. The things he does for the kids, taking them on these trips to Washington and what have you. There are so many good sports, and people will go, this is a down day in sports. No, it isn't. There is never a dull day in sports.
Exactly.
Never. There's, like today, you got NFL starting, college football starting. You still got every sport going.
Tomorrow, FC Cincinnati's back in the Open Cup against the New York
covered kickball. I posted it.
I know. And I'm proud of you, except the kickball thing.
No. Kickball's getting more publicity because of that than anything. But see, it's a good point. Like you post stuff like that, or Brian or Duggar does. People send me stuff daily, and it's fun for them. A lot of stuff I post, they get it before I do. So people are starving for this. That's what, again, the people in this town don't seem to get it. The radio people are dying for a place to talk and let somebody have them talk. When you ask what I want to talk about, man, I do it all day. I type all day. For me, it's more fun when the people ask the questions, because there are a lot of things that people are interested in that they don't feel comfortable asking. Well, you're not going to know if you don't ask.
Exactly.
It's a lot of fun. But it's not as easy as people think it is. It's very, very humbling to have 82,000 comments. I don't know where that blows my mind still. But the personal relationships I made, or for people to private message me that feel that comfortable to be able to reach out like that, that's overwhelming at times. To see damn near every state in the union represented, the Virgin Islands, Canada, so forth, that's overwhelming. You know, for people to look forward to this, man, that's something else. But it's fun. You have to make it fun for the people. Otherwise, they're not going to tune in. But in your case, there are so many great stories around here and people to talk to, that you keep doing what you're doing, and it's going to work out very, very well. Sooner or later, somebody's going to wake up at either O&E or at Wing or HIO even, and they're going to figure it out. What we did worked. It worked. They can't dispute that. And they're going to give somebody else an opportunity at it. And they're going to make a lot of money off of it. But they just have to open the door for you people.
It's about the people. It's not necessarily about the host. I mean, the host can have their opinions, but it's not.
Well, how can you call O&E Dayton Sports Station when you have no live shows on? I think the Outdoor Erection or Connection, whatever Jerry's show is. We always had a bet when I was on air I was going to say that. Jerry's a great guy. But that's your only voice. And how can you be Dayton Sports Station?
I mean, I will give them one thing. They have Miami Redhawks football and basketball on during the year, but
who cares? I hate to, when I was there, it was the same stuff. It's like, okay, who cares? I mean, that's Oxford. That's not Dayton. Now, granted, if they want to pay you money, that's lovely. But
Oxford is
that's not Dayton sports.
I like Miami, and I really like Guggen Arena. The ice.
The one thing that I always argued with them, and I still think they should do it. Okay, we had the Reds at one time. Everybody's had them. Give them another flavor. Give them the Indians. Give them the Yankees.
I mean,
you can get the Reds on LW. That's where people listen to them.
Exactly.
So give them another flavor. Go give them the Indians. They're good now.
That's one thing I liked about that one night I had the Ohio High School Basketball Coaches Association All-Star Game at Denison and Granville. The nice thing is I was driving home at night through Columbus, and I forget what station it was, but they had Indians. I'm like,
yep.
Oh my God, I can listen to an Indians game without paying for it.
That's the whole thing. The sports is such a huge thing, but yet the big problem, I think, is the people running these stations aren't from here. So they just think, oh, this is the way the market runs. No. No. And don't give me this ratings nonsense. Yeah, ratings are important.
But it's just numbers.
That's exactly what it is.
I mean,
sponsors count. Listeners count.
Automation to me should just be used when you don't have anyone.
I can make numbers sing and dance. I have 200 hitters that are better than 300 hitters. They do more damage.
You owe me a song at the end of the podcast, by the way. You get to sing.
Another day in paradise, man. Every day, that's me. I sing and your thing will break.
I mean, no. I've broken a couple microphones already on this set. But let's not talk about that. But really, I mean, that's the whole point of my podcast. I know that people can't call in and talk.
But they can still send you questions.
Exactly. So the next time I have Mark Schlemmer on, I will give you a week's advance notice. It's like, hey,
you just give me a day.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be any different 7 days later.
I mean, I don't know what my schedule is going to be like. I mean, college soccer's starting. I mean, I do have a fill-in opportunity coming up soon. Maybe. But, yeah. Next time, I will give you a week's notice. You put up some, like, what questions you want to have me ask.
You can do the same thing. Just share it on the page.
I did, I think it was the second episode where I was talking about what one event in Dayton history, sports history, that you want to change. And
I remember that one.
I think I got about like 19 responses out of that. Most of it hockey, but
you got a few Wright State UDs too.
Yes, I did. And I did talk about that. So I can't say I haven't talked about it, but I don't.
Anytime you want to post that I'm going to be on or whatever, and you got any questions, go ahead. Send them in early, and I'll share it on my page. And, maybe one day we get Price in here with us and, do two of us at one time.
That'd be cool.
There's some good stories for you.
I can't wait to hear some of the stories. I know eventually Doug and Brian are going to be on my podcast because...
As they should be.
Yeah. I mean, people need to know about GCSN.
Yes, they do.
I mean, it's... The vision that Doug Brown and Brian Reese had, it's phenomenal. And it's definitely not a fly-by-night station, as one person has called it, and doesn't have an internet radio station anymore about sports. But, like I mentioned, Doug and Brian, I can't thank them enough for A, letting me be a part of GCSN, B, letting me host a podcast so I don't actually have to find hosting on my own, and C, just the support and all the stuff I got to do. So, Mark, that's an hour.
You're building stuff. That's the best thing you're doing.
Yeah,
you're getting to build it. You're going to get more and more and more guests on here. I'm just thinking in my own head, Rick Chamberlain, for example, Price, for example, the people at Central State, the Wright State people that don't get near as much credit or ink as they should.
I wanted to have an episode about, having the sports information directors just one day we talk, but I don't know.
Why not?
I
think people would be fascinated at what their job really and truly is.
Yeah.
An athletic director used to be an athletic director. Now they're more of a banker. They're more of a fundraiser.
They watch the budget.
It's changed a lot. You better go get a whole lot of fundraisers if you're the AD. SID used to be called SID, Sports Information. Now it's some title. I don't even know what it's called.
I'd still just call them sports information directors.
It's a very interesting job.
It is. You get to see a lot of sports in college. I mean,
and you're responsible for letting everybody know what's going on.
The SIDs I know at Dayton and Wright State, top-notch people, and they do a great job.
Doug Hauschild is as good as it gets at UD.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But there are so many guests that you can have on and enlighten these people. Because like I said, the radio around here sure as hell don't do it.
And it's a shame.
It is a big shame. I mean, when we were on, as you know, we had Price, we had Rick Chamberlain, we had...
You guys had everyone under the sun. And like you mentioned, even comedians on the show. We would have,
the Bengals, the Reds, you name it. We were lucky. We had anybody and everybody. But it was still the local show. It was still the people's show.
When I didn't have class of Wright State, I'd listen in. I liked your show.
You never knew what you were going to get. And exactly. The one thing that always has struck me was when people would either write to the station or call my office at the station and say their mother, their girlfriend, they have no idea what the hell we're talking about or know anything about sports, but they won't miss your show because it's just funny. That was always fun to me. It was like people are actually listening to this stuff. Probably one of the most humble things that I've ever gone through with the show was a gentleman died across the street from where I was living. I went to the viewing and his wife comes, grabs me, takes me up to the casket, which I'm not a big fan of. He had a transistor radio next to his head programmed to 980. She said, I had so many dinners with you. And my only answer was, be glad I wasn't on at night. We'd have been in bed together. But just the fact... Just the fact that this guy, he's dead, he's laying in the box, and he's got a radio because she said he would not miss your show. That's overwhelming. Absolutely incredible.
It's just the way you connect with people during your radio show and during your Facebook page and this podcast episode. It's just, I admire that. I admire the hell out of that.
It's phenomenal. I mean, I don't know how to explain it. Lucky, fortunate that there's just this many people. And again, being able to meet so many great people because of this show, obviously one day I wish it would come back.
Yeah.
The nonsensical excuses I keep getting are just incredibly stupid, but
yeah, our antenna hurts.
It was just the people made it what it was, and to deny them a show, it makes no sense. None.
No.
If you want to keep on whatever that stuff is they call now, fine. Put them at 11 o'clock at night. Put them at midnight. Whatever. But give the people what they want. This area is dying for a place to talk sports. And again, the page proves it.
And also, with the amount of sports teams and sports fans you have here, I mean...
You don't have enough time in a day. Actually, you need more than just one.
Yeah.
To have people like yourself and Brian and Doug talk to the local people. Give them their time. You'd be amazed how many people are going to tune in because it's their kids, their neighbors. It's their people. But for whatever reason, they don't see it.
Hey, Mark, thanks for being on this podcast.
You come back anytime.
You know,
I look forward to this. I haven't done this in so long.
You know I will. When, I'm not sure, but you're on the podcast list.
Anytime.
Mark, I want to thank you for giving me the time today. A little over an hour and a half before editing.
Doesn't seem like a half hour.
No, it doesn't. It didn't seem like 10 minutes. Let's be honest. With all the sports we covered and everything,
we didn't even talk wrestling. Just a Ric Flair mention. That was about it.
I know. I don't know much about wrestling though. I really don't. And I mean,
we didn't even talk swamp people. Didn't even talk about Wicked Tuna. Come on, man.
I don't know what either of those things are. I don't
greatest TV shows on now.
I just have broadcast TV. I mean, most of my sports listening is via radio.
National
it's not
Geographic
on TV.
Channel, the History Channel, Swamp People.
I mean, if it's on Netflix or Hulu, I might check it out. I don't know. But
those are two things over my head too.
Hey, I told you could have the last. I told you can have the last thing to talk about on the microphone.
I do that every day. Just if there's one thing I could say or stress to people, give Lee a chance. Give Doug and Brian a chance. Their station. They're busting their ass for you people, trying to put the local sports on, cover the local kids. Colleges, high schools, whatever, kickball, Dragons, give them a chance. You know, they're doing you all a favor, but give them a chance. If you want to hear different stuff on radio, you got to call the stations. You got to have your voice heard. But more than anything, I want to thank everybody for doing what they did for me on the radio and on the Facebook page. It is just an unbelievable family that you all have created for me. Like I said, I don't know where 3/4 of them are coming from, but I'll see names daily and I just go, wow, where'd that one come from? But for the radio people and the decision makers, give the people what they want. Sports is a big thing in the world. Give them, there's enough nonsense in the world to make people crazy. Mm-hmm. Give them some entertainment. Give them something to laugh at.
Especially nowadays and lately.
That's why my page is politics free. I don't need that garbage. You want that? Put it on your own page.
And my social media, I can tell you, I don't like politics.
That's a personal preference, like religion. You want to talk that stuff? Do it on your own page. Mine is for sports and entertainment.
And mine's just, hey, here's what I'm doing. Go listen to me do this thing.
And mine, you're not going to find out when I go to the grocery or when I take a walk.
Okay, the last time I told people I was going to the grocery, it was looking at an old Kroger. The Riverside one. I don't know if you ever been, but
I had a guy ask me where K. Rodgers was. That's Kroger's, by the way.
I haven't heard that since
I didn't know what the hell he was talking about.
I had one of my friends from Toledo say K. Rodgers on my college radio show, and it's like, I
looked at the guy and went, hell are you talking about? K. Rodgers. Got it.
I mean, I can understand Kroger's and Myers. I just don't know where people got that up. There's no S at the end, but
hey, anytime, man. You're more welcome. We have a good time doing this.
Exactly. It's been a lot of fun, Mark.
I'll even tell you stories next time.
That might be episode 6.
That might be an R-rated show too.
That one, I don't know. iTunes is kind of finicky about, stories.
Well, I hope everybody listens to it and has a good time with it. And I said, if you want to ask questions, just type them in. I'll answer.
And those are some of my favorite segments from the first time Mark Schlemmer was my guest, episode 5. You want to go back and listen to that episode or any of the episodes Mark Schlemmer's been a part of, it's sindaypod.com. Then go towards listen, drop the menu down, click on guest, and then you can hear all the Mark Schlemmer episodes on Radio Public. I got all the links there. Enjoy. I meant no offense. Just picking out the first episode, but by the time I got done with episode 1 of Mark Schlemmer, I couldn't handle it. I was really sad. I had to shut the computer and come back, and I just couldn't continue on. It really, really has been that difficult to make this episode go. I do apologize if you're angry that I've combined this episode in with my 5 years of the podcast, but I did it because A, Mark was the big reason why this podcast grew, and B, Mark was one of the main reasons why I still continue this podcast. Because there's been times I've made no qualms about it that I considered stopping this podcast. But Mark was there every time and say, nope, don't quit. Keep going. Keep at it. You're going to do great things. So Mark was always the guy that would tell me to don't give up. And for that, I can't thank him enough. And I've heard some stories that aren't going to be shared on here. And again, I'm sorry if it makes you angry, but Mark was my friend. So I can remember the last time I drove him around, we went to, that's Key, right? North Xenia on 68. Taking him there. 35 was closed heading to Xenia, so I went Dayton, Yellow Springs, and went the back way to 235. And he's like, wow, you really know your way around. It's like, yep, this is my area. I know Cincinnati, Dayton like the back of my hand. So I remember that, and then he gave me a check for all the times I drove him and helped out with groceries when I could and everything like that. So Mark was my friend, and I am glad that I finally got around to honoring him and saying thank you, Mark, for everything. That will do it for this episode of the Cincinnati and Dayton Sports Podcast. Yes, I know it's went to 2 hours. Normally I don't have that long of a podcast episode, but hey, it's like good old times, because most of Mark's episodes went past 2 hours. Although I think the longest episode I ever did was Gem City Squadron at about 2.5 hours at Yellow Brick Tavern in Dayton. That was a fun one. I miss Gem City Squadron. I know they're the Five Rivers faithful now that just follow Dayton soccer, but it's just not the same, you know? They're rooting on for the Dynamo, and just it was our team. But one last time, Mark, thank you for everything, and I'm proud to have called you my friend. That will do it for this episode of the Cincinnati and Dayton Sports Podcast. The next episode will be TKDS Sports' Kevin Fowler, and that will most likely come out on Monday. Hope you listen into that. That's where you can hear the news about, oh, hey, iHeart Dayton and TKDS Sports are partnering to bring local sports back towards radio. You know, originally the whole thing was I was going to end it up with Dayton Sports Radio died with Mark dying. But with this, no, it's growing back. And Mark Schlemmer has a big part. Chick Lugwood, too, with his sports talk show. He's getting on board as well, and I can't wait to work with him more. And yeah, Dayton Sports Radio is coming back, and it's actually going to be about Dayton. Funny that. Really just stalling out this ending, aren't I? How much more topics can I get before I reach 2 hours on the dot? I'm not going to waste any more of your time. I apologize. This has been the Cincinnati and Dayton Sports Podcast. Here's to year number 6 and more listeners joining in on the local Cinday Sports Podcast train. We'll talk to you again next time. Again, Kevin Fowler is the next guest. That will be on Monday the 25th. And hopefully we'll get a few more guests in before my schedule rockets the heck up again. Because, hey, as you heard on Rob Ebel's episode, I'm going to be working 5 days a week in the Queen City. So I am very happy about that. Talk to you again next time on the local Cinday Sports Podcast. Still the only source of Dayton Sports Radio until August the 1st. Take care. Thank you for listening to the Cincinnati and Dayton Sports Podcast with Lee W. Mowen. Be sure to bookmark CindayPod.com, spelled CINDAYPOD, the official website of the podcast. You can find your favorite ways of listening to the local Cinday Sports Podcast, such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, TuneIn, Google Podcasts, Pandora, Amazon Music, the iHeartRadio app, and many more. You can also purchase merchandise from TeePublic and Redbubble to help support the podcast. Follow on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at SindayPod, and the host at the Lee W. Mowen. The closing theme is Cosmopolitan from Pecan Pie on Uppbeat. This is Lee W. Mowen signing off another episode of the Cincinnati and Dayton Sports Podcast. Thank you for your continued listenership, and join me on the next episode.